What if we've been conditioned to conflict? What if all the Old Testament conflicts have conditioned us to war in the name of God? Now, Abraham Lincoln said in a speech concerning the Civil War, "We both read the same Bible and pray to the same God, and each invokes his aid against the other." So, did God pick a side? No. Lincoln went on to say the prayers of both could not be answered. Religion is a powerful thing, sometimes motivating, and humans fight over it all the time. From time to time, religion has even caused conflict between our diverse and tolerant friends. And then again, humans also fight over small bits of compressed carbon, tracts of dirt, addictive and mind-altering substances, and the ever-popular sporting events. Let me stress this, it's not just religious ideology that causes problems. State-imposed atheism was a big feature in the brutal 20th century regimes led by Stalin, Tito, Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, among others, and this resulted in suffering and the murder of millions. Tens of thousands of Russian Christians alone were executed for their beliefs by atheists who intended on purging religion from the Soviet Union. But it's true, religion has been a major feature in some historical conflicts and with the most recent wave of modern terrorism. Like both law and politics, religion can be used to defend the oppressed and to oppress the defenseless. Religion, unfortunately, provides a useful cover and powerful motivator for the evil-hearted. This is because religion can be so different in the hands of the power-hungry. It really says more about the human heart than it does about religion. But then again, there are just so many human conflicts, unfortunately, that involve religion. You can get people to do almost anything and then tell them God's behind it. And faith does not excuse the undeniable barbarity that has been unleashed over the centuries. The misogyny, the beheadings, terrorism, killings, beatings, and cruelty, they are all real, and they continue to this day. We've been seeing a growing battle in the Middle East between Shiite and Sunni, as well as a Jewish state unleashing against Christian and Muslim Palestinians. There's even an anti-gay crusade led by some Jewish, Christian, and Muslim leaders. But then again, the 20th century is filled with examples, namely Stalin's Soviet Union and Mao's China. That didn't need God as an excuse to commit genocide against the state's own people. Look, I know I've been guilty of claiming religion is the source of the world's evils, but it's kind of a careless comment, because at the same time, I'm under no illusion about the fact that religion is routinely used to justify heinous crimes. The men who flew planes into buildings on 9/11, the Pakistanis who went on a murderous rampage in Mumbai, and the Bali bombers, all killed as many people as they could in the name of their religion. Religion has been implicated in all sorts of conflicts and violence throughout human history. There is blood on the hands of the faithful, and no avoiding the fact that in the services of the wrong people, religion can be a force of great harm, and this includes Christianity. If we consider the sins of the Christian past, critics have plenty to work with. There are the witch hunts, the Crusades, the Christian support of slavery, the Spanish Inquisition, the list goes on. Indeed, while the religious have murdered throughout history in the name of their God, I've been unable to find any evidence of atheists killing anyone in the name of atheism. Now, atheists are no more or less capable of evil than anyone else, but it seems that murder, particularly mass murder and war, is a sign of commission. In other words, human beings are generally only prepared to fight and kill in the name of something bigger than themselves. So while I don't agree that only religion causes conflict, I'd argue that all mass murder and war are fought in the name of a bigger-than-self idea. Many wars have gone down by believers, somehow justifying their actions, calling them just. Jesus calls his followers to be peacemakers. So how could a Christian cabinet member or a congressman support the idea of going to war? Well, sadly, here's what most churchians are hearing and thinking, which is, when Jesus returns, he will wage war against the nations which are led by the Antichrist. In Deuteronomy, God himself sends Israel to war. Therefore, this is not so much about whether God condones war, because they say he does. They go on to say God's acceptance and use of war in a fallen world is not difficult to understand, when viewed in the sense that often and ultimately he is manifesting his attributes of justice and righteousness using war. Yahweh uses war to manifest justice and righteousness. Whew. Therefore, this is not about whether Yahweh is for or against war. The answer to that question is obvious from Scripture that he does. This is a modern view to justify not doing what Jesus said we should do. Yeah, I personally can't see Jesus coming back with a sword in his hand. And I don't believe Jesus would ever condone murder or a just war. Jesus chose to love, serve, and even die for his enemies rather than engage in justified violence against them. He chose to be killed rather than to kill. Followers of Jesus are called to mimic his attitude and his behavior towards our enemies. And you know, Jesus himself seems quite aware that the attitude towards enemies that he commands his followers to embrace is very different from some aspects of the Old Testament. For example, in the Old Testament, God twice rained down fire from heaven in judgment on various individuals and groups. Yet when John and James wanted to do the same thing in the New Testament, Jesus rebuked them. Along similar lines, Jesus sometimes contrasted his teachings with various teachings of the Old Testament and various traditions that arose out of those teachings. For example, the Old Testament permitted one to retaliate against an offender by taking an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But Jesus expressly forbids his disciples to act on this principle. Rather, his disciples were to express self-sacrificial love towards their enemies. Clearly, the way of the kingdom Jesus was establishing was very different from the one of Yahweh in the violent strands of the Old Testament. Our call is to mimic Jesus, not the warrior portrait of Yahweh that we find in the Old Testament.
Thank you for watching this and all our videos. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Stay curious, fellow travelers, and have a great day.